This is Athletes as Educators with former pro basketball player, championship winning coach, and author Angela R. Lewis. Angie Lewis interviews current and former athletes who are passionate about sharing the lessons they've learned and the experiences that have shaped their lives. A resource for parents, a guide for student athletes, a source for current and former athletes, keys to transition off the court. Welcome to the Athletes as Educators podcast with Angela R. Lewis.
Welcome to this episode of the show. I'm Angie Lewis, your host. On the show today, we have Anita Maxwell. Anita is a former professional women's basketball player. She played in the WNBA. She's been just a phenomenal athlete, played all over the world. She's a community relations professional and has a company called Successful Living, where she helps people with financial investments. Anita, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Angie. I am delighted to be here.
Anita, will you talk a little bit more about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Oh, goodness. Well, that's an extensive question, especially since you talked about the basketball part. I think one of the things that those of us in, previous sports backgrounds, with those backgrounds, we appreciate about what you're doing is that it allows us to not only showcase what we're doing today, but how we used basketball to transition into what we do today and who we are today. I mean, it played a big part in that. So I will start with the basketball part. You mentioned a brief bit about my background, but I played in college at New Mexico State. And a lot of people, when they hear about a lot of the accolades that I have, they're like, why'd you go to New Mexico State? I mean, that alone has its own story. I was always that child who was thoughtful, probably way too thoughtful at a young age. And I just remember having a book that I kept. And I was recruited by hundreds of colleges. I kept this book, and I had pre-written questions for all of them when they came to my house. And I remember the coaches looking at my parents like, aren't you guys going to ask me questions? They were like, she's got it. I mean, we're just here for the ride, But I already had questions outlined for all of them. And I had this way that I weeded some out. If you sent your assistant coach and not the head coach, I automatically didn't consider them as a school, because obviously I wasn't that much of a priority for you. At least that's how I felt in my high school mind. And it came down to a few schools. My final three was USC, Syracuse, and New Mexico State. And so if you're just looking at that list, you would wonder, why would you choose New Mexico State out of all those schools? For me, it was more than just the name of the school you attend. I was thinking, this is going to be an experience. These are people I'm going to spend the next at least 4 years of my life. So I found that at New Mexico State, I felt more connected with the players, which is who you spend a lot of your time with, even more so than the coach. But I also really liked the coach, and my parents did as well. So I was leaving a big... Well, you can start with my website at Successful Living. It's success-full-living.com. You can also go to AnitaMaxwell.com. And on Facebook, I am the Anita Maxwell. So you can see more about Successful Living and what we are doing there as well.
So that you never miss an episode. And go over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review. For more resources and information about today's podcast, you can check us out at AngelaRLewis.com.